Good evening and welcome to the FITT Show. Financial information for today and tomorrow. I'm Bobby Kinzer,
And I'm Thomas Doty.
and we are the FITT Show, helping our people get their finances in shape. Hey, Doe, I want to start the show off this week with a lot of. I can understand why a lot of people are so uncertain, tensed, fearful, don't know what's going on. There's so much going on right now, Doe. But that's why I want to put the emphasis on why it's important for our show, because we try to at least give you some information how to navigate through this financial jungle. That's all we trying to do, to help you position yourself and to take out a lot of the uncertainties of the financial markets, the about retirement, about savings, about planning. So reason what sparked me though, there's this new financial concept called velocity banking. Have you heard of it?
No,
It is deep though. What it is, it's a strategy on how to pay your mortgage down quickly, right? And what it does, it takes the equity in your home, takes the credit cards, it takes the positive cash flow from your paycheck, and it's focused everything on paying. It takes you a HELOC. You get a HELOC, and it help makes you accelerate paying your mortgage down. And this is the thing, it can work, but though it is so complicated and the risk is so high, but people are calling me about this. And that's why I always think about this show, why it's so important, man. So anyway, I'm gonna get off my soapbox because I mean, it's just amazing, though, the amount of things that out there and the things that people are getting tripped up with, you know.
but Bob, you make a good point. The whole financial situation is complicated, and most people haven't put the time in. I know I didn't growing up. I mean, you were too busy dealing with life, and you didn't realize it's one of those things you don't know what you don't know. So you didn't realize the complexity involved until you start going through things. And if you were fortunate enough, you learn some of the mistakes you were making. You learn from other people some of the mistakes you were making, and you learn from other people some of the things you should be doing. But it wasn't part of your everyday, this is what you do. You know, you think, okay, I work, I save a little money, I spend a little money. But the financial environment, as far as managing it for yourself, it's really complicated and it takes time. And little positive adjustments can have far-reaching effects on how much wealth you have. And that's the part that really strikes me and why I wanted to do this, because there's so many things I learned the hard way. You know, that's the old saying, you can learn by listening or you can learn by learning. You know, most of the things I learned by learning, some of which included a lot of mistakes. And we're just trying to share things to people so they won't make the mistakes and they just realize all the ways that you can enrich yourself just by making small adjustments. And most of them involve having knowledge, knowing what to do, when to do it, how to do it. And that's it in a nutshell, you know?
And there's a saying that goes like this, though: if you're not changing, you're choosing.
No, it also goes, what you don't change, you're
You're
choosing.
choosing,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
If
It's
you
weird.
don't change it, yeah. If
Yeah,
you're out of shape,
yeah.
you're choosing
That's
to
what I
be
mean.
out
If
of
you're
shape.
not changing, you're choosing, right? Yeah.
Yep. If you're not eating right, you're choosing not to eat
You
right because you
choosing
aren't
not to eat
changing.
right. It's just that simple, though, you
Yep.
know. But anyway, I saw that because a friend of mine, my ex old teammate from high school, called and asked me about that, and I looked it up, and I was like, "Whoa!" I thought it was a bank. You know, I said, "Well, make sure it's FDIC insured." He said, "Nah, it's called velocity banking. The word velocity, it speeds up the payment of your of your mortgage." And you can pay it off in like in 12 years. And I'm like, well, why don't you just get a 15-year mortgage and get a fixed, rate and pay it off like that, or add extra money for your payment.
But again, there's positives to getting a 15-year mortgage because I've always recommended getting a 30-year, but paying it like it's a 15-year. And that way you have more flexibility as far as you're not tied to that higher payment. And it's one of those things, most people think that a 15-year mortgage is going to be twice as much as a 30-year mortgage, but
No,
that's how you think. But it's
right,
really, it's not that much more.
right.
And so I've always had 15-year mortgages, but I was always able to swing the payments. But if you take a 30, you can pay it like it's a 15 mortgage. And that would
That was
just
the
be,
other concept that beats the velocity banking. Just pay extra.
yeah, yeah, that's what I said. You pay it like it's 15 and you put 200-300 bucks extra a month. Or they always talk about making that one extra payment a year, which takes years off your mortgage, which is interest
Right.
rates, interest payments that
Because
you
that's the
pay
key.
tremendously.
That's why the 15-year isn't like double the payment, because what it's doing is taking out all that interest over 30
Yeah.
years that you're paying. That's the concept with velocity banking though. They're saying if you take the HELOC and take 20,000 out and pay down the mortgage, and then it's some crazy
Yeah,
stuff.
but
But
you still owe the HELOC. I don't like the borrowing money part
yes,
because that's not your money.
right. But there's strategies of using debt to pay debt, because I know what's the guy's name? Oh, the Chinese guy. I can't think of his name, but he's like
The good son. I mean
not Kawasaki.
yeah, that's his
No,
name.
no, not him, not him. It's another guy that has this theory.
Kawasaki. Yeah.
He's saying, banks are really. He said, if you leave your money in the bank, banks are using your money. He said, you might as well use the debt to pay instead of having your money in the bank and you owe the bank and fees and stuff like that. And it sounds good though.
Well, using debt, you just as if you just put it on paper, you're much better off using other people's money to
Right.
do financing. But you got to be savvy to know what you're doing.
You got to be disciplined.
Yeah, you have to be savvy, or you can find yourself into a giant hole. You have to
Yeah,
be
greater
savvy,
debt.
and things have to go a certain way for it all to work.
Right. And one misstep and it could, thrust
Yeah,
you into greater debt. Like with the HELOC, the velocity banking. I was looking at them like, oh, okay, they want to use the credit cards and want to use the HELOC, but I'm like, so a lot of HELOCs are variable rates. So what happens is the interest rates go up because they banking on them going down. So
right.
anyway, that's what made me fired up though to start off the show. But as we always do, let's start at the top of the show though with the stock market.
Okay.
You
And
got some good news? Come on,
we
you
got
got to
some
give
good
it.
news and some bad news, but most of it is positive. And
Oh,
because
okay.
the Dow has been on a nice little winning streak, you can see it's up a couple of percent for the past week. It's been doing very, very well, and I think it's had its longest winning streak since 2017, which is good. So it's up 2.4%. Now the Nasdaq is down this week, and there's a couple of reasons. Microsoft is up, but it had been up very, very high, and it's kind of falling back. And some people think this is just a correction because the Nasdaq, the technical stocks, are really up about 35% for the year. So there's going to be time where it takes a breather. And Tesla's been up and down. It's down 15 points for the week, and that's mainly because they kind of signaled that they're going to continue to cut prices to push volume, and so the EVs took a spill this week, and that's what that is. Apple is still hanging in there. It's up to 193, and again, that's up around its all-time high. The same with Microsoft. Microsoft's all-time high is probably up around 355, 360 now, but it's still hanging up there. Pfizer's up just a point, it's not really doing that much. And NVIDIA took a little drop. And that's because one of the semiconductor companies in China reported earnings, and their earnings weren't that hefty. And so NASDAQ and several other semiconductor stocks went down. But the thing that I've been watching is for Microsoft, Apple, NVIDIA, Google. a lot of the analysts have been consistently raising their targets for those stocks. And what that is, you get a consensus of follow specific stocks, and they set out earnings targets for those stocks. Well, if you've been watching Microsoft, Tesla, Nvidia, they've been raising their targets as their stocks has continually gone up. And again, like I said, the NASDAQ's up about 35% for the year. So those stocks have been on a pretty good roll. And some people are thinking it may be close to a bubble. Other people are thinking it's just catching up
Right.
because during the when the stock market went down, when the interest rates started going down, the Nasdaq took a much bigger hit than the S&P. So it's going to be curious what goes on in the next couple of months. A lot of the tech stocks announce earnings next week, and we'll see how they do. But I am still bullish on all of the tech stocks. I'm still in. I'm not selling. I got a bunch of capital gains I'm sitting on, and I'm not looking to pay that. So I'm expecting them to keep going up, and that's just how I roll.
But don't, it's so interesting. I've had this Siri XM Sirius radio stock for a long time, right? I think I got it at $1.50, right? For some reasons, it's up to 42. It's up 42%. It's up to $7 a share, and I've had that for a long time because it was at the time when it was XM radio and Sirius, and there was a debate on who was going to buy who out. And a lot of people thought XM was going to buy out Sirius, but it ended up being the other way around. Sirius brought XM out. That was early days, when people were going from what they call celestial radio, like we have FM, AM, FM, to satellite radio. But it's up 42%, and it has something to do about them converting stock, something like that. But
Yeah, that's a funny one, Bob, because that's one of those things. I always look for things that my kids like and that are on the forefront. And for example, my daughter in Brooklyn, my baby girl, told me about these Hoka tennis shoes.
right, I see a lot of
And
people wearing them.
I bought some. I love them. When I go to the gym, I see them all over the place. And she
Right,
told me about it over a year ago. And typically, I'll invest in something like that, and I didn't. And that stock has more than doubled since then. But again, that's one of those things on the forefront where I think Sirius XM is more of an old technology,
right.
and you got to sit and listen to what somebody else wants to play as opposed to you deciding what you want to hear via Apple Music or Amazon Music, or I'm not sure
But it
how
was ahead
Spotify
of its
works.
time at the time, though, because it had no commercials, and that was the selling point. And it was at that time it was pretty ahead because that's why I was into. I was tired of all them goddamn commercials, and I make my own playlists even with Sirius. I mean the stations that I choose. Like the watercolors, jazz, and the R&B. So anyway, yeah. So anyway, but anyway, it's up though. It's up 42%.
Nothing wrong with that, but
Yeah.
I just don't know if that's a long-term play because
No, I don't think
seems
only
like
only
the
because
other
only because I'm
seems like
holding
it
it though.
seems like a cassette or an
Yeah,
8-track.
shoot, yeah, or VCR.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is though. But I was just holding it. Like I said, I wasn't pushing it, promoting it, but I was just having to sort it. It jumped up 42%, and that caught my eye.
Mhm.
Because I didn't want to cash out of it. But no, I'm not recommending it.
Well, how's your Ford? Ford has been on a nice run.
Yeah, Ford been on that, and GM also dope. But obviously today is down, but it's up higher than what I bought it for. But not XM, GM has been on the move, and for some reason GE too, though, because I've heard, I always thought GE because they had so many, they were so diverse in so many industries. But let's talk about the cryptocurrency market. Dope is down. The market cap for cryptocurrency is still at 1.2 trillion, but the Bitcoin dope took a hit, man. And I think I understand what's going on because it got all the way up to $31,000 per Bitcoin, and now it dropped $1,577 a coin to $29,806. And I think, and usually when that happens, the big boys, what they call the whales, because they have those little spreads, they put major money in. So when a little spread go up, they take their money off the table. And the little guys are one that sometimes left holding the bag. But it got up to 31,000 though, dope. Because I remember last year it was down to 16,000. So some people still are up at 29,000. I know I am. I got in at 19,000. 19,000? Yeah, I got it at 19,000. So anyway, Ethereum, the smart contract is down 8%. Tether is down, 1%. That's pegged to the dollar. Dogecoin, I don't know. Dogecoin is just holding. It just ain't been doing nothing. And dope, every time I get ready to drop Shiba Inu off the chart, it moved back up. It was 19 last week. It moved back up to 18. It'd be moving. I be getting these notices. Oh, Shiba Inu is up 8%. I'm like, what the world is up with that meme coin? Because that's a meme coin, like a picture, and it's actually an East Indian dog, which is weird. So that's it, dope, for the cryptocurrency and the stock market, man. So let's get into today's show, dope.
Yeah, and just kind of a precursor to our show today. Just I'm gonna give some facts just about what's going on as far as wealth in this country, and it'll lead us into what we're going to talk about today. But in 1989, the top 1% of households in the U.S. controlled a little less than 23% of the wealth in this country. Okay, so the top 1% had 23% of the wealth. That number has now reached 32%.
Wow.
And by contrast, the bottom 90% has seen their share of wealth drop from 40% in 89 to 31% today. And as we've all talked about, the rich has gotten richer and they're just extending their lead. Yeah, and a lot of people say it's government policy, it's taxing, and that's part of it. But I firmly believe, and I think it proves out, that there's an investing component here as well. And a lot of people assume there must be a secret investment opportunity reserved for the wealthy. Surely once you make money, there are deals, there are alternatives, you get investment managers. But we've talked about that even having professionals pick stocks for you is not a guarantee. You do have an advantage in that you have some money to take some risks and to be a little more, take a little more risk, which increases your opportunity for reward, as we always talk about. But that's more the extreme than the rule. And a handful of people may do that. But if we look at how the top 1% and how the top 10% allocate their assets, it shows a much simpler path to wealth. The top 10% hold 70% of the U.S. wealth, okay? And these numbers, when you think about that, about assets and liabilities, so while the top 10% holds 70% of the asset, the bottom 90% holds 75% of the debt.
Dang.
Okay? So the bottom 50% by wealth percentile owns just 6% of the assets, but 32% of the liability. And so when we talk about ownership in stocks, it's still uneven. the top 1% owns more than 53% of the stocks, while the top 10% holds 89% of the stock. Okay. And what we're trying to get you to understand is that's the key to building wealth is holding stocks. So stocks, they're an asset class that historically has the highest long-term returns. So it makes sense that the gap between the haves and the have-nots has grown because the stock market has done very, very well. So things are far more equal when you talk about housing. And so the bottom 90% by wealth holds just 11% of the stock market, but they control 56% of the housing
Of the
market.
housing, yeah, I figured
Yeah.
that.
So the bottom 50% own less than 1% of the market, but 12% of the housing market. When you think about this, that explains why the liabilities for the bottom 90% are so much higher, since most of these households have mortgage debts to repay. And so, change happens in your life and the broader economy and market on a regular basis. So we think about all that. And that's why we want to talk about a mid-year review to try to put you back on track or get you on track to working towards your goals. There's some things if you have a plan and you're doing the things we talk about in our show, there's still some things you need to do at mid-year that you may not typically do on a week-to-week or month-to-month basis. So your financial plan needs to be dynamic, efficiently, to change when things change. So it gives you a chance to reflect on what's taking place so far this year, how you need to move, what's going on with the economy, your investments, what's happening in your own life, what's changing in your goals, what's the economic outlook for the rest of the year, what's inflation going to do, mortgage rates. So it's important for you to evaluate what areas require pullback and where you can provide some flexibility, especially in terms of risk, and maybe be more aggressive. So how can you adjust your financial plan and meet your needs today, while at the same time recognizing market volatility?
So, Dope, this is a good segue because Modestine, my good friend, says, why would you want to pay your mortgage down? And it sort of leads into what Dope was just saying. I mean, there's many reasons why. One is to get rid of the debt. Two is so you don't pay so much interest, and
Hey, Bob, but I think her point is, and this is where when you make a blanket statement like that, you got to put some facts behind it. Like if you have a mortgage that's 2.2%, no, you don't want to pay that off. You
right,
don't know. But
it's cheap
if
money.
yeah, but if you start getting around 4, 5, 6%, then maybe you should consider paying it off, because it would be hard for you to earn that 4, 5, 6% risk free. Okay. So when we talk about paying off a mortgage, that has to be looked at for a specific person, a specific situation, a high interest rate. You got some money that you can take to pay the mortgage off that's not doing as you're not making as much on the money as you are making paying off the mortgage. And so if you have a very low interest rate, yeah, you want to keep that free money or that low interest rate money as long as you can, obviously. But if your interest rate's a little higher, and right now everybody has different mortgage rates. It's so funny. That's one of the reasons why the housing market is still hot, because a lot of people with low mortgage rates don't want to move up to a bigger house
Right.
because their mortgage rates are so high. So no one wants to trade a 2 to 3% mortgage rate and pick up a 5 to 6% mortgage rate.
There's no
So
inventory.
right, so they're holding on to their houses. So it's like anything else we talk about. You have to look at your own specific situation, and then you can make a decision about what you should do.
And that is so true, though, because some people just want to be, free of paying that mortgage, and I get it.
I
Now
don't get it. I know
no,
I understand it, but
I
I don't get it.
understand it, but I don't get it even though.
Yeah,
But
because there's no your
all
life's
the
no
money's in
better
the
because your
house.
mortgage is paid off. If it
All the money's in the house,
exactly.
and you don't
And
get to use it unless you take out another mortgage or refinance.
right, and if you run into an issue and you need money,
Yes, it's not liquid at all.
there you go.
You know,
And we
so
talked about this before, Bob. Real simple example. Bob buys a house for 500. I buy a house for 500. I pay 10% down, 50 grand. He pays 30% down or 150. Okay. I got 100 grand to put in to invest and make money on it. If the house goes up 10%, Bob and I make the same amount, right? But I got 100 grand because I didn't put as much down as he did. So you look at it that way, yeah, you're better off with a high. Now I got a higher mortgage, but I also have 150,000 bucks working, or I'm sorry, 100,000 bucks working for me in the market that Bob doesn't. So every situation requires an analysis that's particular to you.
can't never forget that ever, because that's why like Susie Orman and Mad Mac Kramer sometimes when people listen and they be giving suggestions to people, but I said y'all got to be careful because they talking to people with particular and personal situations that are different than yours, and those solutions may not be applicable to you. So, though, let's talk about the mid-year financial checkup. It's like a maintenance work on your home or your car, right? You want to make sure everything's running smoothly, and your financial plans sometimes tend to fall apart unless you maintain them. And you said it before, don't you got life events that happen, such as death, marriage, birth of a child, a job change. And for example, these things can trigger tax and financial implications you need to address before the year's up. So as a result, it's wise to perform a mid-year financial checkup on your overall financial plan. And if you're not sure where to start, Dope's going to start you off.
Okay. And the first thing, and we talk about this because it's so important, it's always important, and it's always where you start. You check your financial goals. If you don't have some, you need to. But if you do have goals, you need to review them because goals are subject to change. And something called life happens throughout the year. Maybe a child has changed their plans for college. Maybe your retirement date is moved up or down. Your work circumstances are getting shaky. Or your portfolio isn't performing as you wish it should. You may want or need to add a new goal. Maybe something's come up in life that you want to buy a retirement home. This is when you take the time, look at it carefully, make sure it's doable, make sure your goals are reasonable, that you can actually achieve them and that they make sense. And then you update them and make the appropriate adjustments to your financial plan to meet your goals as they stand today.
Makes a lot of sense, though. The next thing is, when you make your checkup, you need to plug the leaks in your budget. We talk about budgets a lot because, that's your roadmap. And if you uncover any unnecessary expenses in your budget, like, shopping or unnecessary subscriptions, recurring fees, now is the time to eliminate them. Review your budget to understand your essential living expenses. And notice key, I said essential living expenses. Look for opportunities to reduce your financial risk, such as paying off your credit card debt or reducing lifestyle expenses that may, be hard to maintain in a cash crunch. I'm talking about, for example, things like those memberships that you haven't been using, to the fitness center, shopping habits, eating out, dining out a lot. Now, the goal is to be prepared for anything. That's the key. So this might include counseling or streaming service, that you rarely use. To finish the year strong can cut the fat out of your year's budget.
Okay, next we're going to talk about looking at your investment, assessing their performance. And this applies whether you pay someone, you have an advisor, or whether you do it yourself. You have to review the performance to make sure your portfolio is positioned as best you can for what you know is going on today, and that it's going to help you meet your long-term goals. And so you just can't look at recent results, but you got to look at how
Right.
your investments perform over time. As a minimum, you should use the benchmark of the S&P, which is basically, we refer to that as the market. That's the S&P 500. And that's a lot of times we'll talk about if you are new to investing or you're looking for a reasonable investment, we'd always say, yeah, an investment fund, or I mean, I'm sorry, a mutual fund or EFT in an S&P index fund. And that way you're just saying, I'm going to make what the market does. Whatever the market does, that's what I'm going to do. And when we talk about what the market has done over time, we're referring to the S&P 500. And I think it's averaged between 8 and 9% for the last 80 years.
Right.
Okay. And so every market is going to have good times, bad times. That's just how it works. We talked about this last week when how the market does after bear markets and recessions. It always does better. Okay. So that's all history. That's not saying what's going to happen in the future, but typically history gives you a good idea of what's going to happen in the future. And right now, we got a lot of volatility. We got inflation. We got the Fed trying to stop it. We got wars going on. We got political unrest with, former presidents being on trial and elections coming up, which could definitely change the course of how the markets are going to move. But all this stuff's going to pass. Good markets, bad markets, uncertainty. One thing you need to know about investment world, it's going to always change. And that's where creating a good investment plan comes into play. As you review your strategy, always be sure that you're comfortable with the risk you're taking. Okay? You have to be comfortable with how much risk you're taking. That's going to keep you from staying up at night or wanting to jump off a cliff because the market takes a downturn. There are going to be downturns. There are going to be recessions. There's going to be bear markets. You have to be willing to accept those if you want the highest reward. We always talk about the more risk you take, the higher the reward. At the same time, when things go bad, if you have a very risky portfolio, it's going to go down more than the average. You have to be willing to accept that. And we usually speak in terms of don't put money in risky things that you can't afford to lose. Have your market balanced. Have a well-balanced portfolio that's not heavily involved in one segment. For example, NASDAQ has done great the last first half of this year. I think it's the best performance in 40 years. But it wouldn't be real smart to be totally invested in the NASDAQ because it could fall just as quick as it has risen. And so that's when you say, let's say you had a big run, you had a lot of stocks in the NASDAQ, and you had a big run. And so now you need to rebalance. Maybe you take some of that money in that has done real well and move it to something a little more conservative. And typically when you set up a risk analysis or you set up your risk tolerance, you'd say on a scale of 1 to 10, how much risk are you willing to take? 10 would mean you want to do exactly what the market does. You would invest 100% into an S&P index fund. Okay. 0 means you only want cash and cash equivalents, things that are usually 100% guaranteed. Most people are somewhere between the 4 and 8 categories. They want to be mostly on the safe side, but they still want some return. Okay. And so a lot of that depends on where you are in your life. If you're closer to retirement, obviously you don't want to have a lot of your money tied up in something that's risky because you're going to be needing it pretty soon. If you got to pay for college, you don't want to have that money tied up in something risky because it could take a fall.
Right.
So you have to rebalance your portfolio and make sure that you are okay with your risk tolerance. So, and you say, I might want to be a 5. I want to be right in the middle. I want some risk, but I still want some stability. And that would be reasonable for some people. But again, it all depends on your particular situation, what you're trying to accomplish, how much money you have, and how much money you can afford. I don't want to say to gamble, but how much money you can afford to put at risk. And that's one of the reasons why rich people do well, because once you have money, you can take a bigger portion of it and put it in something that's very risky that would reap a high reward. And if it doesn't pan out, you still have a lot of money left to live on.
Right.
But you still have to have some money in the market if you want to build wealth. That's just Thomas's opinion.
So, dope. A strong budget includes a plan to create and maintain an emergency fund. And a lot of people sometimes take this for granted, the amount that to put aside, because you need to check your emergency fund because life can be full of surprises, and cash reserves provides a critical safety net for unexpected turns. Now, use your mid-year financial checkup for a closer look at your emergency fund and determine whether you're on the right track or should you be considering, boosting up and giving yourself a good cash cushion. Now, this fund should cover essential living expenses for at least 3 to 6 months. Now, we always give these benchmarks because they're just benchmark, and it doesn't mean that they inflate. Some people say 6 to 12. Some people say 12 to 18. But it's whatever you feel you can save. But one thing, the more you save, the better you are, especially in these particular days and times. Dope.
Yeah. And the next thing you need to look at is your interest rate. Now, but Bob knows me pretty well. We talk about money a lot. He knows I'm cheap. And when I say I'm cheap, and I shouldn't say cheap, I'll say frugal. But I try to maximize every financial decision I make. Okay? That's just how I am. It's a challenge to me. I enjoy it. It's almost like a game. But you need to take the time to look and make sure you're maximizing your interest rates, whether it's what you pay in credit cards, what you pay on your home equity line, what you pay on your mortgage, also what you're receiving in your checking account, in your CDs, if you have I-bonds. You want to make sure you're maximizing how much money you have. And it's one of those things that people don't like to change. Banks and wives, or spouses, people don't like to change, and they'll ride it out instead of making a change. But if you can increase your savings rate by 1 or 2%, that's going to put more money in your pocket without any effort on your part. The only effort is doing the research to make sure you're maximizing how much interest you're paying. And especially during these times, if you have any debt that's variable, you need to take a look because it probably has gone up. And maybe there's a way you can switch to another vendor that has a lower interest rate. Every transaction affects your total net worth, be it how much money you're making or how much money you're spending. And it takes time. It does take some time and some effort to research and make sure you're maximizing what you earn and you minimize what you're paying. So look at your investments, look at your accounts to see where you can make more money or pay less money.
Well, Albert Einstein says those who earn interest, make out, and those who pay interest don't. And the interest is important though, because like what you said. You got to watch out. It's good to earn as much as you can too, but you don't want to be paying on them credit cards either, because that can eat up your cash real quick.
But
Oh,
there's nothing better. There's nothing better than making money doing nothing.
exactly.
That's the best feeling in the world.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's the thing about money, though. While you sleeping, money is working.
Right.
That's money. People don't really realize that once money is constantly moving, man, and it's best that it move with you than without you. Now, during the mid-year checkup, you should also assess, where you are with your retirement and ensure you remain on track with your retired target date, whatever that may be. And if you're in a recent promotion or raise, look at, boosting your retirement contributions. You may want to increase your contributions, and and if you turn 50 this year, you may be able to take advantage of the catch-up contribution. Though I've never seen them this high before, man. They allow you to contribute $76,500. I know that's a lot for some people, but that's a big plus if you are able to do that. That's a big cushion for your retirement. And the more 401k plans, that you can contribute to. I know some people have two. FDIC have two. It's you need to look at boosting those contributions in this mid-year review.
Yeah. Next thing you got to do at mid-year is look to protect your assets. Look at all your insurance coverages, life, health, uh, disability income, your house, home insurance. You got to review those mid-year to make sure you're covered. And it's one of those things when you're in that 30 to 60 range, you're more likely to be disabled than you are to be killed. So a lot of people don't know that, and they don't have disability insurance. A lot of the jobs, a lot of the companies offer those things. Make sure you're maximizing or maxing those out, because a lot of them, the group rates are extremely reasonable, and you can get 2, 3, 4 times your salary. And if you have young kids, I mean, to sit down and figure out how much you need to raise a kid if something happens to you it can blow your mind, because it's a bunch of money when you start thinking about how much money you need. And even if you're married, both spouses, if one spouse takes care of the kids and something happens to that spouse, that's a bill you're going to have to pay to have somebody take care of the kids. So that other spouse should have insurance also. So take a look at that. Make sure you have the proper coverages. If you have teenage kids, make sure you up your coverages when they start driving, because they could have wrecks, they will have wrecks. I mean, that's pretty much a given. And so if your income has changed substantially, you might want to look at your life insurance. And just from a personal perspective, I've always been a fan of term insurance versus whole life, because I've always liked to keep separate the investment portion of my portfolio and the insurance portion of my portfolio. And when my kids were, before they got to college, I always had term insurance enough to cover myself if something happened to me, to make sure they could still get their college paid for and things of that sort. But that one of the few things I did look ahead and try to make sure I had covered. But those are the things you got to look at. Make sure you're covered so you don't get caught with a big expense. And a lot of times, it's always easy to accept the lower coverages on your auto insurance. But again, you got to look at your own situation. And if you feel you need the higher coverages, it's worth it to pay for it and have that peace of mind, and at least have the state minimum requirement, so you won't get in any trouble for being underinsured.
They
So
don't. That's one of these things nowadays that people they try to cheat on bodily injury, and they usually take the lowest. But
mhm.
nowadays, with these people driving these Maseratis and Benzes and everybody BMWs, and you hit them, they falling out into the street. Um, like you said, it's very conscious that you might need to consider, taking some of those higher options on your auto insurance.
Yeah, but it's something you definitely need to sit down Look at your insurance coverages on all those things we just talked about: disability, life insurance, homeowners insurance, and you need to have those covered.
And also, uh, God, long-term care. So,
That's another good one.
yeah. So look, though, if you have a flexible spending account, you need to consider your benefits usage closely. Now, some employees don't allow plan participants to carry balances to a new plan, but speak with your human resource department or benefits manager to learn more and make adjustments based on your usage. Now, it may also be a good time to increase your health savings account, HSA contributions to reach your yearly maximums. Because the beautiful thing about health savings accounts, the rules allow you to roll over those contributions and you can keep them regardless of your employment status wherever you go. And and even if even if you're unemployed, there are no downsides to contributing beyond what you might use in a year. HS health savings plans are great. There's another strategy though that they're using, like pad the health savings plan. But if you have the money, just pay out of pocket for some of the health things and why, and use the health savings plan almost like it's a benefit because you can have that tax free money there.
Yeah, it's like a Roth almost. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. The next thing you got to do is if you got college savings, you're saving for college, or you got student loans, take a look and see if you're on track for your kids' college savings. Make sure you have the investments in things that's going to get you where you need to be. Uh, look at if you need to open a 529 plan, or maybe your 529 plan is performing as you think it should. You may have to make a change there. If you're paying off student loans, evaluate the progress. Let them see if you can pay more. Find out if you can get anything wiped out under one of Biden's plan that may eventually go through, and just figure out how you can make that easier on yourself.
Hey, Doe, speaking about that, Biden has a new plan, a $39 billion plan on dealing with, it's called the income driven options on these student loans. And
Right.
he's got a $39 billion plan trying to come back off of them, blocking them with the student debt relief. And it's going to reach about 840,000 individuals. Matter of fact, my daughter in Houston just she put it in anyway because they thinking stuff was going to get squashed, and she got all her remaining student loan debt paid off though. So
That's a
people
good
really,
thing.
yeah, yeah, it was over like approximately about it was a good amount. So I want to talk about now, like managing your priorities and looking at these debts that you have mid year. Now, if you want to pay off the debt, mid year checkup is a good time to attack that plan. Now, if you don't have a payment strategy in place, now is a great time to start. Now, first, you should incorporate paying debt into your monthly budget to ensure you're allocating money each month to it. How much you allocate is dependent on the approach to paying down the debt. We've talked about it before. There are two common options. There's the to repay your debt. There's the snowball method, which you paying off the smallest of debts in the entirety. And then there's the avalanche method, which you involves paying off the accounts with the highest interest rates first. Neither one of them are more advantageous than the other. It's just which one you feel more comfortable with. But you definitely need to look at how you paying off your debt because that debt can be an albatross around your neck.
Okay. Another thing we've always talked about is inspecting your credit report. Now we've told you before, you get one free credit report from each of the three credit reporting bureaus. And we've always suggested getting one every 4 months free. And so you need to do that, especially with all the identity theft that's going on. You need to take a look and make sure you don't have any accounts on there that you don't know about. Make sure your credit score is where it need be. You may have to get someone to remove something from your credit score, but it behooves you to take a look at your credit report and make sure it's where it should be, and also know what your credit score is and make improvements where you can so you can get the lowest interest rates that are available. And a lot of companies now look at that when they hire. So there's a bunch of reasons why you should get your credit report and make sure it's accurate, and then look for ways to improve your credit score.
And that actual site is annualcreditreport.com. There's one out there that's called freeannualcreditreport.com, and it's not free. The one where you get your 3 free credit reports. Another little thing I want to remind people, though, because the free 3 credit reports from the 3 major bureaus, they don't give you a credit score. A lot of people say, well, how is that going to help me if it doesn't have no credit score? Well, what you need to look at is very helpful because they have what they call risk factors. Like they have, delinquency, they have 30, 60, 90 days. You can see that. They have utilization rates, meaning, your debt to credit ratio. Those are called risk factors. And you don't need to see a score because you can see those things and know that it's going to affect your score. And if there's things that's been on there that's not, then you can call and get them taken off, and it can help you. So it's very important to look at that credit report. Now, I want to talk about ways that we can tidy up your taxes. Now, mid-year tax planning is a strategy that can reduce your tax burden for the next filing system. And you don't need to be waiting till the end of the year because a lot of people be rushing and trying to, do some crazy things. So mid-year is a good time to look at where you are tax-wise.
Yeah, and the first thing is, like anything else, you got to know what your goal is. And really, tax planning is just looking at where you got income coming from, what are your deductions, what are your credits, what are your exemptions. And then to be most effective, at least at the start, tax planning should be about you and your personal and financial goals. So begin your mid-year tax planning process with a strong sense of where you are financially and where you want to be.
And before I go any further, though, I just want to remind individual people that we get a lot of our information from Kiplinger, or Apple News. We pull from a lot of different places, so we want to give full disclosure on the information that we get, that we use, because and you can do the same, y'all, because remember, information is key. So I just want to give that disclaimer. So, also another one dealing with tied in the taxes is assess and estimate. Okay, of course, a major aspect of mid-year tax planning involves assessing and estimating your taxable income. So it's a great time to take stock of diverse sources of your income, earned and unearned, and estimate your tax liability. A lot of people don't do that. They wait just to see, what comes back. But knowing your potential tax burden mid-year can help you map out estimated tax payments. And if you're collecting a paycheck, make a critical mid-year tax withholding adjustment, mid-year. Additionally, if you're self-employed, mid-year is a great time to assess the state of your business and the potential liabilities so that you can make estimated tax payments that may be needed. So it's so important to mid-year because a lot of people don't, really look at their withholders. And if you had some kind of events that, they increase your income, you might want to look at adjusting your tax withholding mid-year.
Yeah, and the name of the game is minimizing and maximizing. We've always talked about that. So, you can look at how your income's coming in. You might want to maximize that 1 year, depending on where you are, or maybe double up on your expenses in 1 year. And you got to understand the tax rules. Things change every year. And again, if you're not going to be on top of it, find someone to do your taxes for you, who can also help you with planning. Not just, anybody can plug the numbers into a software package and spit out your return. What you need is someone to look at your income, and ways you can minimize how much you pay in taxes. And you can be as aggressive as you need to be. I would never recommend anybody break any rules, but tax rules are there, and you should take full advantage to make sure you are getting all the tax deductions that you are entitled to. So
Right.
you need to be aggressive and make sure you're doing that. And so you might be able to move some expenses to the next year to take advantage of a situation, or move some income to another year, because so much of it is based on timing and when the income or expense is incurred. And so you might have a big capital gain or loss, and or you might have to take two RMDs in the same year. You need to look and see if you're gonna, maybe you made more money this year, or because you had gains, it may kick you into a higher tax bracket. So you may need to make an estimated tax payment so you don't have to pay an interest charge for not having had enough money withheld. There's so many reasons why you need to look at your taxes to make sure you're going to be where you need to be. And
Right.
you might want to do something with charitable giving. I think I mentioned it before, because the threshold for itemizing deductions is so high now, it may benefit you to give all your, to increase your charitable contributions and do it every other year. So you double up in one year to make you over the threshold so you can get a deduction. But again, mid-year is the time to do that. So you have a full 6 months to implement whatever plan you come up with. You can't wait till after the year ends and then figure out what you're going to do on a tax return on the page. You have to do it during the year. And if you need to change your exemptions or up your exemptions to increase or decrease the amount of money you have withholding, you need to do it at the mid-year point as opposed to waiting to the end of the year.
Right. So mid-year is a great time to think about what went wrong during the most recent tax filing season. So we still talk about taxes, and to vow to do better next year. For example, if you weren't happy with your tax preparer or are ready to make a change for other reasons, take time to look at the qualified tax professional. Or if you have been doing your own taxes, perhaps you want to investigate different filing options or find a trusted source advice to guide you. It's so important to get organized and also stay organized. Additionally, mid-year is a great time to read up on changes and key amounts that could affect your tax liability for 2023. Stay tuned to inflation adjustments, amounts for tax credits and deductions that you typically claim. Now, if you are collecting Social Security, make a note of the yearly COLA, the cost of living adjustment. Now, pay attention because state tax changes. Many states have passed major legislation this year, and those changes can impact your finances and your taxes.
Yeah, and one more thing you need to look at is your estate plan. Check to make sure your beneficiaries are up to date on your insurance policy, your retirement accounts, your 401ks. Make sure they're all up to date. You also may want to look at your will and trust to make sure things are where they should be. So you look at your will, your guardianship directives. If you got minor children, it's a whole another a whole complex things that you need to look at. If you're looking to gift money, understand what the maximums are, and you can plan to do that before the end of the year. And so just look at your whole thing, everything related to estate planning, to make sure it's where you want to be, because there's no guarantee you're going to make it to the end of the year. I hope you do.
So this is the bottom of the line to the mid-year checkup for 2023. Financial planning now looks a lot different than 10 or 20 years ago. There's no longer a one-time only process that results in a thick, because I used to do these though, financial planning document, and most of the people I did it for is set on a shelf to collect dust. So with our ability to aggregate data and the current information that can be at our fingertips these days, there's no reason why you can't have a dynamic financial plan. So, by accounting for all that may be going on in the markets, the broader economy, or your own life, a mid-year financial checkup can help affirm that you're doing all you can to steer your financial life in the right direction, though. That was a lot of information. We up on the hour, and we're going to go straight to the summary and takeaways because that was a lot of information, though. Another 20-pound information to 10-pound bag. But let's bring it home for the people because I know we covered a lot.
Okay, doke. First one, a mid-year review is essential. And if you don't have a plan, take this time to create a plan. Again, the ramifications of not having a plan is you probably won't have as much money as you would have had you had a plan. So hopefully if you do have a plan, do a mid-year review to make sure you're on course.
Adjust when necessary. This is the biggest part. The one thing that's constant is change, and you must be able to move with it. So if when necessary, make the adjustments because, like we said, there's so many events that can change your whole financial situation, and the bottom will fall out. So make those changes when you need it.
Yeah, it's going to help keep you on track. And you have to know that you're going where you want to go. Okay? If you don't do a mid-year plan, you probably won't accomplish what you want to accomplish. This will help keep you on track, keep you focused on what you're trying to get done.
And it prepares you for the financial uncertainties. Like Doe said, there's an election coming up, but if you plan your finances properly, appropriately, it doesn't matter if it's a Democrat or a Republican in. It doesn't matter if it's a pandemic. It doesn't matter if it's an economic downturn. You will be able to absorb the future shock by just putting certain things in place that can protect you or at the least prepare you for things that may come up. So, Dope, that was a lot. We rolled, man. We rolled. Want to thank everybody for staying out. And you know we got to do the roll call. Modestine, you stay with us. My sister Linda, Nolia, and Gloria, my stalwarts, my family. Man, I love y'all so much. Y'all support your little baby brother. I really appreciate that. And the noteexperience.com, Rodney Madison, they're always dope. And now, Dodie, thank you so much. The wonderful now, Delta Sigma Theta's finest, Joanne Skinner. Thank you, Joanne, and your comments are taken well. Joanne said great information, very informative again. And we're signing off. We'll be here next week. Next week, though, is the 27th, if I'm right.
You're all right.
We'll be back with another show. It'll be show 111, 111. So thank you all for tuning in. We look forward to seeing you. And remember, keep putting those comments in there and keep sharing this information with your family and friends because the more we get this information out there, the more people can be leading to more better generational wealth. So take it easy, and we see you next week.
Peace.
Peace.